So thanks everyone for coming to the ASA Early Career Researcher Chapter virtual series on managing careers during a pandemic, which is very relevant in these difficult times. So just so everyone's aware, this session is being recorded and it will be uploaded onto a public YouTube channel so that everyone who missed out can watch it. So I'm your moderator for today. My name is Henry Zavaro and I'm a postdoc at the ANU, and Tian Tian will be my co-host today. Tian Tian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Tian Tian and I'm a postdoc at Swinburne, so happy to be your co-host.
Thanks. Okay, so I'd just like to start off by acknowledging that the country we're on. So in the spirit of reconciliation, the ASA ECR chapter acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. And just as a reminder, this event is covered by the ASA Code of Conduct. So the ASA is committed to making ASA organised, sponsored or supported meetings, events and publications inclusive, productive and enjoyable for everyone, regardless of age, caring responsibilities, cultural diversity, disability, gender, indigeneity, sexual orientation, gender identity, physical appearance or religion. And for more information, you can visit the link on the ASA website. So today's panel is about jobs in geoscience, environmental science and policy analysis. And we have three excellent panelists here with us today who are going to share their pearls of wisdom with us all. Neil Crighton, Kirsten Howley and Fang Yuan. So I'm going to be reading out some prepared questions that we have, but our audience members can feel free to volunteer questions through the chat or by using the raise hand feature in the participants tab if you'd like to read out your question to everyone over the microphone. So to start off with, I'll ask our three panelists to give an introduction to themselves. So their past, where they are at the moment, starting with you, Neil.
I remembered to put myself off mute. My name's Neil Crighton. I currently work in the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, which is a government agency that enforces competition laws and consumer protection laws, among other things. I grew up in Sydney and originally trained, I guess, as an astronomer. I did a PhD in astronomy at the University of New South Wales. And then I did 3 postdocs after that. So one at the University of Durham in the UK, another in Germany at the Max Planck Institute for Astronomy, and then a last one in Melbourne at Swinburne University. And at that point, I changed fields, I guess, and switched to move in the public service. So that's kind of my background.
Thanks, Neil. Kirsten?
Hi, I'm Kirsten Howley. I am a physicist at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. My background is in astrophysics, studying galactic dynamics. My current job, I work on planetary defense, what to do if an asteroid is on a collision course with Earth, what are our options. Yeah, that's a little about me.
Great, that sounds simultaneously exciting and terrifying. Now on to you, Fang.
Gary, my name is Fang Yuan. So currently I work at Geoscience Australia. So we're also a Commonwealth government agency. So I'm an Australian citizen now, but I grew up in China, did my undergrad study in China, then moved to US to do my PhD and then came to Australia without a job at the time, and then eventually find one at Mount Stromlo. And so I did a postdoc at Mount Stromlo working for SkyMapper. And as an astrophysicist, my specialty was looking for cosmic explosions, so gamma ray bursts, supernova, and all kinds of weird transients. And now I basically work with satellite imagery, so looking back on Earth, but using satellite imagery to monitor land cover and land cover change on the surface of the Earth. Stop there.
Excellent, thanks. Okay, so now we'll move on to our pre-prepared questions. So the first question is quite a simple one. What do you like the most about your current job? So any of you can jump in any order you like to answer.
I'm happy to go first. So things I like, I guess the most thing I like about my current job is I feel like it has a very positive impact on society in general. in a very immediate way that I didn't get that same feeling when I worked in science. I did feel like I was having a positive impact in society, but you don't have that immediate feeling of what you're doing is making a difference right now. So that's something I value in my current job.
There are a few things that I really value about my current job. One is my projects actually finish. There are due dates, and when the due date is there and you finish your project, you move on to a different project. So it allows you to have exposure to many different things over the course of your career. I've worked on severing oil pipelines in case of emergencies like the Deepwater Horizon disaster. I've worked, I work on planetary defense. I've worked on, material assessment, all types of things. So that variety is really nice. The other thing I like is, pay and job security, two things that really weren't promised in academia to me. I know that I have pretty good stability and I'm compensated well for it.
Actually, I agree with a lot of the things Kirsten and Neil already said, but so yeah, like I think the first thing I would say is the real life impact that my current work has, although most of the time still indirect, but we do help people understand water resources. And especially now I'm actually working on a project to start establishing a data platform for Africa, so entire African continent. So we're hoping to have established this whole platform that help African people use satellite imagery to monitor water resources, urban expansion, help sustainable development goals, and also help food security. So that's actually something that a lot of my teammates are really passionate about, and I really enjoy that work that has that real life impact. But other than that, we also work huge amount of free and open data, which is actually, I think, not common in industry, but there's a huge potential. We just have petabytes of free data there that we need so many people to work with them and realize the potential of that. And lastly, I still get to work with pretty pictures as I did in astronomy, and I get to do public outreach, and so that's awesome.
Yeah, really fascinating answers. I think particularly in the in the midst of all the disasters that are going on in the world at the moment, a lot of early career researchers are reconsidering that the direct impact that they can have on society with their work. So that's really interesting points that you raise. So our next question is has there been a pivotal moment in your life that has set you on the trajectory for the career that you have now?
So from my point of view, I don't think so. I mean, there wasn't kind of a single thing that happened that sort of said, that's it, I'm not doing science anymore, got to change. It was more of sort of a gradual thing. I guess I've always sort of had a sense of, fairness. And my dad worked in the public service in local government. And so I think I sort of got that partly from him. So that in that sense, I think it kind of, makes sense that I've ended up working in the public service. But yeah, I can't think of there being a single moment where I kind of just decided, that's it, it's time to switch kind of thing. It's more gradual.
Yeah, for me, there's been many pivotal moments. I come from a lower socioeconomic background, and I went to a high school that didn't really do well at the time. So I kind of had to go to community college and do things the long, hard way. But a lot of people will say luck, but really it's being prepared when the opportunities present themselves and then seizing the opportunities. And so I've been presented with many opportunities, and I've tried to take advantage of as many of them as possible.
Yeah, same here. I think I just, life takes lots of random turns and take you to places that you never know. And yeah, I think I've just landed here somehow, but, and I actually really enjoyed every step along the way as well. So I think that's most important. And I'm willing to take whatever next challenge comes up.
Yeah, thanks. That's really interesting. So this next question is maybe related to the previous one. Did you transition out of academia and astronomy by need or by choice, or a combination of both?
So that's a very interesting question, because I remember, it's again one of those pivotal moments, right? When I just finished my PhD and I had 2 job offers. I had one from the National Laboratory and I had another one at NOAO. And NOAO was doing exactly what I had done for my PhD. It was within my comfort zone. They really wanted me. They were wooing me. They were like, "You're a perfect fit for us." And I ended up taking the lab job. And the reason I took the laboratory job was one of my professors told me to take the lab job and run. And at the time, I felt very offended. I felt like maybe I wasn't good enough for the academic track. But in hindsight, I realized that, you know, we're producing many, many PhDs, and there's a limited number of academic spots. And because professors are producing all of these PhDs, they're encouraging them to follow in their footsteps, right? Make me in your image. And so there are many other opportunities out there beyond just the academic track that allow you to do research, to publish, to be active, to explore your own ideas. So, you know, I think, yeah, I think there's, anyway, I'll let somebody else speak.
I can go next. So I'm aware this is going to be, you know, put on YouTube and anyone can see it. So I may not be as forthright as I may otherwise be. But I mean, I really love doing astronomy, and probably, you know, in a world where, you know, job security wasn't an issue and I had the freedom to do whatever I could do, and I could, you know, easily get funding, probably I would still be doing astronomy. So in that sense, I didn't kind of leave by choice. But I mean, at the same time, there are a whole lot of things which I kind of didn't like about academia, that I kind of don't have to deal with now, and I really love that. So I'm also just really happy with where I've arrived at now too. So yeah, I guess I would have to say it's a combination of both. Yeah. Yeah, and that was very vague, so feel free to ask for more detail later on about that.
Yeah, it's definitely a combination for me as well. My postdoc was finishing up, so I was faced with a choice of what kind of job I want to pursue next, and I don't think, I didn't think I would do very well in academic, because I don't feel like I'll be writing lots of papers, and I'm not particularly good at doing that, and I feel the pressure. And also, if I take up another postdoc, yeah, I'll be under that. I'll have to make a choice again in a couple of years, which is not ideal. So yeah, so definitely there is a need, and at that time it's just seems to be trying a different career path is a good option, but definitely was also by choice, because I wasn't, it was never, I just had to do astrophysics, and I don't want to do anything else. I just enjoy working with data and people and making things happen. So yeah, like I was happy to try out something else as well. Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, thanks
to echo
for sharing your experiences.
Just to echo what Fang said, I mean, that whole publish or perish is real, right? And leaving academia, I mean, I still write papers, I still publish, but there's not that same pressure. You don't feel like you have to do to be successful. And I remember going on trips with my best friend, and she took the academic track, and we would be on vacation and she would be in our hotel room writing papers, because that was the pressure of her job. And I got to have a good time and not even think about work. So it's a different lifestyle.
Wow, that's quite a sobering reality of what it's like to go for that tenure track position, I suppose, in the current job climate. So for our next question, was there a learning curve associated with transitioning to a drastically different science?
I can go first this time. So actually, I feel like the field is actually more similar than you would think from the outside, because a lot of the things I do is still remote sensing, is just looking back at planets, our own planets, and so we actually understand we're looking at a lot more than I used to be. But it was definitely, there were a lot of new things that I had to learn the first year, and even just the number of acronyms. I think there are a couple of people in my team that are new are still struggling with those. So there's just so many new things that definitely a lot to learn, but also that I think as researchers, we're all very good at learning new things, and we actually enjoy learning new things, I hope. So I actually had a lot of fun learning that as well, because you actually feel that achievement, and also actually realize that what we had, understanding of the math and physics actually helps you learn a lot of new things very quickly. So that's actually great experience. And I'm still learning a lot of new things every day, because I use data to help real life problems. And so I still want to understand what it is about, and so I still enjoy that, and I feel like I'll just keep learning. Thanks.
Yeah, I think any job you go to, you're going to have to learn new things. And I had a very steep learning curve. I went from working on galaxies to working on asteroids, and those things in the astrophysics community are quite different. And it wasn't expected that I would know. I had to take time. But the great thing about astronomers, astrophysicists, geoscientists is that you are basically multi-physicists, right? You know how to solve a variety of problems in different ways. And in some ways that was an advantage for me, because I was used to not having a laboratory to do an experiment, right? Our telescope is our laboratory. I was used to doing uncertainty quantification. I was used to doing image processing. So I came with a lot of skills that, even though, each specific job required something different, I was able to figure out how to solve the problem. I was able to communicate that through visualization, through, giving talks. And so I had a bigger skill set than I gave myself credit for, and it made the transition a lot smoother. Learning the physics was actually the easy part, and it was really kind of applying what I knew. That was the challenge.
Yeah, I dropped out there for a bit. I'm sorry. But yeah, there was also a learning curve when I moved to the ACCC. As you can imagine, I had to kind of, I was reading undergraduate's economics textbooks when I was sort of applying for jobs and things, just to give me the check that I understood the basis of how things work. And then I've had to do more training at the ACCC. But yeah, as Kirsten said, people are kind of understanding that you'll need to take time to learn those things, and also the skills that you learn in astronomy in terms of breaking down a problem into the most important tasks, and then tackling those, and then presenting those in an engaging way to people, are incredibly valuable skills, no matter what area you move into. So that's really been helpful.
It's reassuring to hear that there are workplaces out there that are willing to give you the time to pick up the new skills you need, instead of expecting you to know everything before you start. Yeah. So I guess the next question is related again. Are there any skills or techniques you learned in astronomy that very unexpectedly turned out to be helpful in your new job?
Viewing papers is a sort of much more directly transferable skill than I imagined it would be. So a lot of what we do is kind of, you get reports from external, people, or, consultants or whatever, and you have to go through that and kind of understand what they've said, and, find holes basically, or, things that could be done better. And so that I was surprised how closely that mirrors the process of reviewing papers.
So for me, it was a lot of the computing techniques that I learned in astrophysics. I did a lot of optimization, maximum likelihoods, genetic algorithms. It turns out that that was very useful going to a completely different career. and taking some of that knowledge and those skills and applying them to new types of problems was, you know, I really benefited from having that knowledge and that experience. So I think in astronomy, there are many different ways that we approach problems, right? Analyzing spectra, doing simulations, and all of those skills are transferable to other roles. We're problem solvers, right? That's what we do.
So for me, I don't think it's anything that's completely unexpected. There are definitely the communication skills and even organizational skills that are really, really useful in the real world. But one thing I also feel that it's really important is the ability to make judgment calls. So, because for all of our projects, we're faced with lots of complicated problems. So we're problem solvers, but also there's not one solution, and you have to keep making decisions as well along the way, and under pressure sometimes. And so I think that ability to work under pressure and make decisions along the way and carry a project through, be able to finish that last mile and push things through, that's all really important in the job.
That's really fascinating. I never would have really thought of any of the things that any of you really mentioned. So that's really handy. So in academia, we often have the freedom to pursue our own projects and ideas. Like, we can wake up one morning with an idea in our head and we can just go and spend a week on that problem if we want to. But it's my understanding anyway that, in industry, we often don't get that sort of flexibility. Do you have that sort of flexibility in your current role? And if you don't, did it take you some time to get used to that?
So working at a national lab, I think there's not as much flexibility to go off and pursue whatever you want to pursue. We have deliverables, but you often aren't just working on one thing at a time. You'll be working on a few different things, and you are given some freedom in how you want to approach solving a specific problem. You also have flexibility in choosing the problems that you're interested in solving. So while you may not have the same, free-for-all that you have in academia, you have some more constraints. You do get the advantage of being able to work on many things, being able to approach those problems the way you want to, being able to actually have the satisfaction of completion, and still publishing. I have a lot of colleagues that publish a lot of papers on things that they're interested in. So you do have some flexibility, but it's not like academia, right?
So it's the same for where I work, I guess. You do have much less freedom about what you work on. Because you work as sort of part of a team, and often it's a much more hierarchical structure where I work than academia. You do still get to work on interesting things, but part of what you do is kind of, making your case for what we should be working on. And once that decision has been made, then you just need to go ahead and sort of carry that out. And that is something that I do miss from academia, is not having freedom to just do whatever you want.
So we actually, in my team and program, we actually do have innovation time. That it's not a lot of time. And the way it works changes over the time and does depend on how our other deliverables are going and how we're going with the other projects. But from time to time, we do set aside a couple of days where people propose new ideas, or they simply work on their ideas for a day or for a day or two. So we definitely do have that time available. But most of the time, so first and foremost, you do need to finish the deliverables and targets that the team has set, and the program has committed to. So, but aside, you do have some flexibility, and also the nature of our work is a lot of that is still research and development. So as Kirsten said, there's often an end goal and deliverable, but it's not prescriptive. You have a lot of freedom to pursue different approaches and come up with innovative ways to do things. And actually, for my own experience also, that role descriptions do change and new opportunities also come up within larger programs and larger agencies. So there are actually different types of works that you might be able to pursue with changing your roles, or even within your role, that you have a say of how you define that role evolves. One of the examples I can give is that I started working with optical data mostly, and that's what my program rely on. But we do have this new stream of synthetic aperture radar data, and this is the first time the large amount of free radar data becomes available. So there are actually not many experts in my agency, or even in Australia, that knows how to use this data. So I basically put up my hand and say, you know, I want to work on this project. And so I spent a lot of time learning this new technology, and it's a lot of physics and maths. And so I feel like I'm actually well placed to learn these new things. And now I'm leading the application development on with these radar data. So there's definitely new things. You just keep your eyes out. And if you do have interests that you identify, there's usually ways for you to pursue those.
That's really great to hear that you still have, you know, some freedom within the scope of your job to pursue some, you know, independent sort of study and learning new things. So now we have a question from the chat. This one's asked by Adam Thomas, and he's asked, did you negotiate salaries when you first moved out of academia?
I did, but for Commonwealth governments, they have pay levels similar to universities. So there is certain amount of flexibility that they can have. Otherwise, also because I was finishing up my previous job, so I didn't have an ongoing contract. So if you have another job that you actually get a paycheck from, then you have more negotiating power, I feel like. So I ended up negotiating to start not from the entry level, but there is a limit to that in my case.
Yeah, I was in a similar situation also at a government agency. So I did also negotiate a little bit, but I mean, the position that I applied for was more junior than kind of the equivalent work I was doing as a postdoc. And I sort of took a pay cut to take that new position. And it's taken me a while to kind of, like, you know, several years to sort of advance back up to the level that I had. So that's just the way things worked out.
Yeah, similar. We have a structured pay scale. The difference is you start off high and then you move very little from that, versus, you know, academia, where you start really low and over the course of your life you move to a higher salary. So I think you kind of end up the same place. It's just you start higher earlier.
My next question is another nitty-gritty question. How many hours a week do you work, and how many hours a week do you feel that you're expected to work?
I can answer that one. So in our enterprise agreement, it's very specific about how many hours we need to work. So it's, you know, it's around 40 hours a week. And so I work 40 hours a week. And the culture of the organization is very good. You are not expected to do work outside those hours. So there are, I mean, it depends on who you work with. Some people do work harder than that. They work extra hours. But in general, you know, working on the weekend is just something that in most teams that I've worked with, that just doesn't really happen. And if it does happen in some cases, then you would get remunerated for that, especially if you're in a junior position. So yeah, it's a very different culture to academia, where you're kind of, you know, almost all of the people I work with in academia who are in senior positions, I would send them an email, and then like within an hour, no matter when I sent the email or what time zone they were in, what time zone they're in, I'll get a reply. So yeah, it's very different to academia, and it's something that I really value in my current job.
Pre-pandemic, I had a very good work-life balance. We also are required to work 40 hours a week. Since this is being recorded and aired publicly, that's what I'm sticking with. But one thing that's fostered is actually having a life outside of your job, and it's a very family-oriented establishment. Or, you know, I work at a national lab, and so everybody has a family. People understand. There's a lot of flexibility. But you better get your work done, right? You better meet your deliverable. So there is not flexibility on that. It doesn't matter if that takes you 40 hours or 80 hours, you know, you better finish what you said you're going to finish.
Yeah, I agree with what the others have said, but I actually sometimes do choose to work long hours. Definitely in some of the weeks when I have to participate in events, for example, or there are just things I just want to finish. So, but I don't feel the pressure that I have to. So it's a very different mentality, I guess. I choose to work long hours sometimes, and because I want to, and sometimes I just want to learn new things that I out of my own interest. But I also feel really comfortable taking time off or slacking off a little bit on the other times when I actually don't have these urgent needs that I have to finish up. So, and I do feel like the more senior people actually tend to work more longer hours in my team, because they're just many requirements that you need to do. And also in my specific job, we work with lots of people overseas as well. So we actually ended up having lots of teleconferences out of business hours. So that's something maybe not usual. And I usually don't mind. I used to do a little bit of that even as an astrophysicist. I worked in many big collaborations. But I feel like I'm actually doing more of those late hour telecons or even early ones now. So it really depends. But if I do feel like I have the ability to say no. So yeah, so there are definitely work, and so it's more personal choice now.
So interesting to hear that the three of you have a variety of different experiences with that. So we have a couple more questions coming up in the chat. Keep them coming, everyone. So our first question is from Demaya Danayakara. Apologies for mispronouncing your name, which I probably did. And the question reads, in some of the fields, as Neil mentioned, you will have an almost immediate direct impact to society. So especially being in the civil service, how do you balance your personal opinions versus government policies? So for example, if we assume that sometimes government policies are politically driven, which may challenge somewhat established scientific ideas, personally, have you found it easy to balance this or challenging?
So I actually struggled with this quite a bit, especially working at a national laboratory. And the way that I reconciled this is it's really important to have people that are empathetic, people that are thoughtful, you know, people that have some influence working on these types of projects. I don't always agree with the politics of everything that goes on, but I do feel as though I can positively affect things from where I sit. I have done work that has affected US policy, foreign policy as well. And I think it's really important that you have people that are kind of in touch with everyone else doing that work. It may be uncomfortable for me sometimes, but I think I'd rather have somebody that cares than somebody that just wants to go along with everything that's said all the time.
So, I mean, the Australian Public Service has a set of rules for, a code of conduct that says, employees need to be impartial when it comes to political issues. But for me, the aims of the ACCC, I think that's very important work, and so I generally agree with the actions that the ACCC takes. So that's quite comfortable for me. I think it also helps that the ACCC is kind of more at arm's length from the government than an actual government department. So I may feel differently if I worked in something that worked more closely, more directly with government.
Yeah, I think similarly for me that we're still very much a science agency, so we do provide evidence and information for policy agencies, but we are not the people who make those decisions. And as Kirsten, well said, that we're the people who care about these things, and we do the best we can to provide the scientific data and information, and that's where our specialties are, and that's what we stand behind. The information that we provide, we do hope that these are useful in supporting the policy decisions.
Really insightful answers. Thanks, everyone. So our next question is also from the chat. So this one's from Teresa Slaven-Blair. Fang, you said that you do some outreach with your current job, but Kirsten and Neil, do either of you have any opportunities to do any outreach? And for those that do, is it considered a part of your work hours?
So for me, if I wasn't able to do outreach, I would not be happy at my job. It's a big part of who I am. I'm involved in a lot of the diversity and inclusive actions that happen at the laboratory. We, as scientists, get to collaborate and put in our input, influence policy, culture at the lab. We do a lot of outreach to the external community, going all the way from kindergarten all the way through postdocs. We get to mentor students. So I think it's very much interwoven into the fabric of who we are at the lab, is to give back to our communities and to be involved with them. So I have a lot of exposure to that, to doing outreach.
So our organization does do outreach. I think I guess it doesn't necessarily do too much in terms of directly engaging with the public in terms of going out to schools and that kind of thing. We do training for other competition agencies around the world. So we'll have exchange programs, or we might have people who go over to different countries and present on how our competition system works and how it might be useful for theirs. So I'm not involved in that. Partly because just my background means that's not the best use of my skills for the organization. But if I was involved with that, it would definitely be done as part of work time. It wouldn't be, I wouldn't be expected to do that outside of work at all.
So it sounds like a fairly different experience in astronomy, where most people find doing outreach is something that just have to stick on top of everything else. And those cold winter nights when you're outside with the telescopes. So the next question is, if you could go back in time to when you were still in academia, what advice would you give to yourself?
So I would say, I think when I was doing my PhD and maybe my first postdoc, it would have been helpful if I'd been more aware of what other options were. And if I'd kind of sought out more different experiences, so tried to, work with different people, maybe worked with, different volunteer organizations or that kind of thing to get a feel for what kind of work I was good at and what I enjoyed and the kind of people who I enjoyed working with. I think that's something that would have helped. But having said that, I mean, I don't. I mean, I'm quite happy with how I've spent my working life so far. So I don't think there are any drastic things that I would sort of say, oh no, don't go into astronomy. It was a terrible mistake. Yeah.
I would have told my past self to learn Python.
It's a good one. I actually don't think there's much I can tell my past self, because all the things that I think I've heard about all these things about what physicists can do, anything. I just don't know what exactly. And yeah, that's just all true, what I've heard about. But I don't think there's anything that I can tell myself that would change how I feel back then. I'm still going to feel the pressure, and my life would still be probably similar, but it will all work out in the end. So
that's good to hear that everything worked out well in the end. So as a sort of follow-up to that, what advice would you have to give to PhD students or early career researchers who are, planning to make a career move into industry or into any of your chosen fields?
So advice that I would give is, a lot of times we're focused on the science, right? We see some sexy science and we want to pursue it. For me, that was dark matter. I really wanted to pursue dark matter. And instead of choosing the science, I chose my advisor. Instead of choosing the academic track, I chose the work-life balance. And I really think it's important to not get caught up, necessarily in the specifics of what you're going to be doing, because if you're not happy outside those specifics, you are not going to be a happy person. It doesn't matter what you're pursuing. So my advice would be, look at the team, look at the collaboration, look at the location where you're going to be living, look at your work-life balance. Those things are also very important. I would say even more important than the science itself. And I love science. That's a big core part of who I am. But I'm so glad that I decided to pursue something else, because I ended up with a great team and my experience was wonderful as a result.
So I would say for people who are thinking of, moving out of science or just changing something to something different, I would try and talk to other people who work in other areas. I mean, ideally people like us who know what astronomy is like and now know what the other side is like. But even other people, just things that you think you might enjoy, just talk to them and see what their day-to-day job is. Also, seek out opportunities to do things that are different to the day-to-day work in science. So whether or not that's being part of a volunteer organization or learning about things that interest you that may not necessarily be related to your immediate scientific field. That's very helpful in terms of practically just stuff to put on your CV that might address selection criteria, but also just to work out what it is you like and what you want to do. And also seek out people who are good at their job and work with them. Because that will also tell you, what you need to do to be able to succeed at your field. So I in working with people, very successful scientists, that helped me realize I don't want to be like that. I don't want to spend my time in the way that person is spending their time, which is not to say that, they're great people, they do fantastic work. It's just, I realized that I didn't want to spend my time in the way that they did. But it also kind of, shows you the bar for what you need to do to succeed at things. So that was 3 things, I think, but yeah, that's what I would say.
Without repeating what's been said, I'll give one practical tip, I guess. If you are thinking of applying or switching field, you don't have to wait until you are certain to start trying. So even if you just put in an application, well, hopefully you get an interview, because I think interviews are actually a great way to not just practice how to get a job in industry or outside of academia, but also learning about what it's like, because you normally talk to people you are likely to work with, so you get to find out what these people look like, how they think, whether you actually feel like you want to work with them, and you actually take the opportunity to ask lots of questions as well, because that's you are allowed to, and if you do end up making those interviews, don't be afraid to make mistakes. We all make mistakes, and honestly, if there's things that you don't know, you can learn them. So I wouldn't worry too much. And of course, if you worry about it, what if you get the job and you can't take it? I know that I would feel bad if I do that, but actually it's okay. So as people who start to hire people now, I actually don't feel too bad. Like, I really enjoy talking to great people. And you never know when your paths cross in the future. So actually getting out there, take up those opportunities to talk to people, in different scenarios, but also in interviews, and to meet people and get people to know you, that might help in the future as well.
Thanks for all that excellent advice. It was very useful. So now we have another question. Does having the PhD itself help you a lot in your job? Or do you think maybe your pre-PhD qualifications would have been good enough?
Oh no, I don't think my pre-PhD qualifications would have been good enough. I think there are some people that are able to do the job that I do with a master's. Those people are quite exceptional individuals. However, getting the PhD taught me perseverance, dedication, commitment. I remember I spent 3 months one time trying to derive an equation for the distribution in a galactic disk. And in the end, I couldn't get any applied mathematicians to help me solve it. And so it went unsolved. But just being able to really be tenacious about something, I got that from suffering through my PhD. And I think it teaches you how to solve problems. It teaches you how to determine what's important and what to let go, right? Better is the enemy of good enough. That is really applicable in my current job. Even when I came out with my PhD, I was still trying to get that error as low as possible without understanding what is a good enough error. I now have a better understanding of what is good enough. But I think if I hadn't gone through that PhD process, I would have been nowhere near where I needed to be when I started my job.
Yeah, I don't actually think of my PhD as more of education in science alone. So yes, like all the hard science I did in my PhD are not necessarily useful in my current job, but as Kirsten said, it's all the other skills that came through the PhD training. So it's more like a previous work experience almost for me, that I've basically just considered going through lots of different, doing different types of works really throughout my PhD and postdoc. They may not be paid as well as outside academia, but they are actually really, really valuable experience for me.
Yeah, so I think having a PhD has been, again, the subject matter that I do now is very different to my entire previous career. So in that sense, the PhD hasn't been that useful. But I think it's been good as a kind of a signal that I was able to, finish a large kind of research task. And so I think that's helped me, get this position in the first place, and it's sort of given me opportunities at my current workplace. I'm kind of a bit skeptical about the value of PhDs. I think that I don't know. This may come across as a bit depressing, which is not my intention at all. I think PhD is a fantastic opportunity and it gives you the opportunity to work with talented people and do really interesting work and take complete ownership of something. But you know, if you're at the stage of deciding whether or not to go to PhD or go into industry, if you go into industry, you know, you'll get paid double what you get, you know, for a PhD. And so, yeah, you do sort of take a financial hit doing a PhD. But having said that, it does have value, and I think it's helped me in my current position.
Can I actually add, what Neil said actually reminded me that one of the other things I really feel fortunate about is that throughout my PhD and my postdoc experience, I got to work with really, really awesome people. And I feel like those are the people that I wouldn't have worked with if I hadn't done my PhD. And I've learned so much from these people as well. So I think, yes, maybe you get to work with different people if you have chosen a different path, but there are certain things that I think you do only learn working with these great minds. And so, yeah, take advantage of that when you can.
It's good to hear that you've all managed to find some value in doing your PhD in your current positions. So one fear that a lot of people have, myself included, is that your intellectual satisfaction in an industry job may be lower than it is, you know, in academia. What has been your experience, and has this fear been unfounded or real?
So I can definitely answer that, because at one point I considered, so I'm kind of in the middle of academia and industry because I'm in a national lab. But at one point I considered leaving the national lab to go for a pure industry job to get that extra bump in pay, like a 25% bump in pay. And I went on the interview and they asked me to give a presentation on my current work. And so I got up there and I had a lot of different projects I had worked on. And so I wanted to show them the breadth of my work. And it became very clear to me very quickly that I would be giving all of that up, right? And I would be working on one thing. I think this was for automated cars. And I kind of panicked in that moment. I was like, I don't want to just do one thing every day, every single day. How boring. And maybe it wouldn't have been boring, but I am so challenged in my current job. And if I were to get bored with something, there's 1,000 other projects that I can work on. I can innovate, I can do experiments, I can do simulations, I can go do policy if I want to. I have a lot more opportunities with that security of still having a home base. So I feel very challenged all the time. And I feel challenged without that pressure of publish or perish. So for me, this was an excellent choice. You know, other people that are looking to teach, that want to mentor a large number of students, that want to have an impact in that way, I don't get to have that same exposure. I maybe get 1 or 2 students a year. I don't really have teaching opportunities. I could be an adjunct if I wanted to, but that would be in addition to my current job responsibilities. So it looks a little different.
Yeah, I would add that I do get a huge amount of intellectual challenge at my current job. It's amazing that the breadth of stuff that you get to work on. I mean, I won't go into details about the things that I've worked on, but if you just look at the news, you hear about action that the ACCC has taken or reports that it's published. It covers a huge breadth of the economy, many different issues. Yeah, it's really great. I will say that I don't do the same kind of mathematical, physical type analysis that I did in science. We do data analysis, but it's not as complex. But in terms of the problems that you're grappling with, it's incredibly interesting and varied.
Yeah, I feel the same, that it's not necessarily really, really hard maths and physics problems that you need to solve now, but there's plenty of challenges there. And also, it does depend on, though, I feel like it does depend on what you're really interested in, because I do think that there are people who are really into these difficult, complicated problems and not necessarily like the more messier solutions that we usually ended up with in real life. So it will be very different. But the other thing is that you always have, when we talked about flexibility as well in how you approach a problem, there sometimes is a simpler thing that you can do, but sometimes there's also innovative way to do things. So it does take creativity and your problem solving skills to find better solutions sometimes. So definitely you would have opportunities to challenge yourself.
That's really good to hear. So next question is, how long did your job search and career transition take?
So mine took about a year, I think. I think I sort of started thinking about applying for jobs, and yeah, between then and sort of preparing my CV and so on, and actively searching for jobs to apply for. And then it was about a year later that I started at this position in the company where I currently work. So yeah, I think I was relatively lucky in that I didn't have to do many applications or many interviews to get this offer. Yeah, I don't know how lucky I was. I don't know how typical that experience is, but I think I sent out, you know, maybe 10 job applications. Yeah, and I didn't get that many interviews. This was, I think, the first, yeah, the interview for my current organization, I think, was my first interview. And I think I maybe had one or two at most more than that.
I think for me, it took maybe a couple of months. I don't remember how long I've been thinking about that, but I kind of started applying or taking this seriously only right before my contract was ending, and I think I ended up with a couple of weeks of gap in between me ending my postdoc and starting the new job, and I only applied for formally and informally 3 positions, and this is the first one I got and took it. So that was pretty quick. Yeah.
I applied for both academic and national lab jobs, and I did it the traditional time that it's done when, you know, everybody is applying, when, you know, when the postings come out for all of the postdoc positions that are available. But what was surprising to me was how much energy it took to apply to an academic job versus how much energy it took to apply to the lab. And applying to academics, right, you need your research statement, you need your statement, I think it's statement of purpose, or statement of research statement and statement of research, right? The one that you've done and the one that you're going to do. You needed to have this super long CV with everything you've ever done on it. When I applied to the lab, I uploaded a resume and a cover letter, and I got to apply to as many jobs at the lab as I wanted. I didn't have to do all of this other work to apply. And so that was a stark contrast to me, because you pour your heart and soul out into these postdoc applications, and then you go apply for an industry job, and it seems so simple in comparison. So that was my experience. But I started applying a year in advance.
So yet again, a different experience.
Yeah, so, sorry, I'll just add, that's a great point, that the amount of work in applying for a non-academic job is massively less than, yeah, requiring what you need to do to apply for an academic job.
So the next question is, what is the most exciting thing that you've done for your job?
That's really hard. I've done a lot of exciting things. I'm going to give you my top 2. One, when I got to blow something up at our explosives test site, that was really exciting. I very much enjoyed blowing things up, and it was for a positive purpose. Just to put that out there to clarify. And then the other thing is that I've really enjoyed is doing public education on asteroid hazard mitigation. Everybody thinks it's like Armageddon, and it's actually not like Armageddon, but being able to collaborate with the community. There's actually a community that, an international community that focuses on planetary defense and what we would do if there was really an impending threat and how we would respond. That's also been very exciting to be involved in that and to, you know, be able to help develop a plan. We have worked with NASA to come up with a prototype for a spacecraft to actually, you know, to actually launch if there was, you know, impending doom. And just being a part of that whole process, I think, has been really exciting. So I don't know, it's a toss-up. Blowing up or saving the world? I'm not sure. They're both pretty great.
I'm jealous of your job, Kirsten. So one thing that I really like in my day-to-day work is that so the ACCC has information gathering powers. It can, you know, ask companies to send it data to assess a merger or to understand a market or to see whether or not a law has been broken. And so we have access to these, you know, what can be quite large data sets, not large by astronomical standards, but quite large, and that we can kind of do analysis on to answer questions that no one else has access to. And it's like, you know, it's like having your own telescope for something that no one else can use. It's quite exciting to be able to, yeah, use data to answer questions that people haven't been able to look at before.
Yeah, I don't get to work with explosions anymore. But yeah, I think that this is too hard for me. I do, like, in general, I just feel like our project is really exciting for me. Yeah, like we're managing all this great data for Africa and setting up a platform to help people use it as well. Yeah, and I'm also leading getting this new stream of data, which is completely different to optical data and how we understand the Earth's surface. So that's all very exciting to me, and learning about hearing how these data can be used by environmental scientists and other people to manage and understand the Earth's surface is fascinating for me. Yeah.
Well, all three of your jobs, at least to me, sound really awesome. So next question is, so did your supervisor or, you know, a PhD advisor before you left academia, were they aware that you wanted to go into industry? And if so, do you think that was helpful or harmful?
I don't think I knew what I wanted to do when I left my PhD program. I told you I had the one professor who was one of my advisors who told me to take the lab job and run. So he was very much in support of it, knowing that I had an academic track or a national lab track. And my other advisor was very supportive, you know, whatever made me happy. So I didn't have any difficulties there. They're still both very supportive, and I'm still in contact. So.
Yeah, my supervisor also knew that I kind of, you know, told him, oh, look, you know, I'm going to start applying for non-academic jobs. And he was extremely supportive and, you know, gave me a reference. I'm sure his reference is part of the reason why I got the job offer I did. So yeah, that was really helpful.
So my postdoc supervisor was Brian Schmidt. So he actually was very supportive and actually encouraged me to try apply for jobs outside academia, and especially if I was going to try at some point, then might as well just start early. So that was really, really, I really appreciate the advices and support I got from him.
That's really great to hear that you all had such positive experiences with that. So our next question is, are there any resources that the ASA or universities in general could provide to make the career switching process from academia to industry easier?
I think in Australia it could help if people doing a PhD were given opportunities or a more sort of structured way to do internships or something like that at a company that may be on an area that's complementary to their work. So, using some kind of tool, whether machine learning or something like that, that could help their research, just to give PhD students a feeling for what it is to work in an environment that's different to academia. I know some people have done that, but I don't know if that's kind of a widespread thing or not.
I think that might be something really helpful. The other thing that Kirsten also mentioned is the programming skills. So my PhD and my previous academic work is not very typical, I guess, because I actually work a lot with data, dealing with large amount of data, finding transients in the data, so lots of data processing. So I actually used Python a lot, which I guess helped me in my current job and getting jobs, but not necessarily everyone has that opportunity. So yeah, giving, I guess, more exposure to the popular programming languages and yeah, possible opportunities to work directly in different kinds of projects would be useful.
So I think universities are aware that they are producing PhDs at a faster rate than there are jobs for PhDs. I don't think that institutions have really addressed this issue. It would be very helpful if they had some sort of career counseling as to what other things you can do with your degree that you might be interested in, and having people think about these things early on instead of last minute when it's a frantic scramble for whatever pickings are available on the job market. I think that would benefit students greatly, just to have more transparency in that whole process.
So next question is your organization currently hiring, or will they be hiring in the next year?
We are always hiring.
We are hiring. Well, we are hiring, but there are different types of jobs. So we do have public service jobs, but also have contractor roles, which we do through agencies as well. So, and I think organization-wise, we do have new projects coming up at different times. So. I can't predict when there will be jobs available, but if you're interested, do check out website, and there will be opportunities posted from time to time.
Yeah, thanks. Someone pointed out I was on mute. I've done that a couple of times. So one important thing for people who want to work in the Australian public service, so the federal level public service, is that you need to be an Australian citizen, which is quite limiting, unfortunately, if you aren't. I don't think Victorian, I don't think state public service jobs have that requirement necessarily. But if you do satisfy that, then there are, there's a central public service job register where you can just search for what jobs are available. So the ACCC is hiring. There's a graduate program each year that you can apply for. There are also just sort of vacancies that come up every now and then that you can apply for as well. I didn't apply through the grad program. I applied for just a random vacancy that they had. And so, yeah, you don't need to go through the grad program.
Great reminder, Neil. I think our grad program has just been advertised, and so if you're interested in coming as a grad next year, do check it out. So yeah, so the grad program is tend to start at entry level, But there are other opportunities as well, so you don't have to necessarily come as a grad. But as I find that I didn't go through the grad program, but I think one of the benefit is that if you don't mind starting junior, is that you actually do get to work on multiple different projects around the agency, so you get to know what different parts of the agency is doing. So that's actually really useful experience.
Yeah, it's the same here. Yeah, and in terms of the salary, it's it's much better than a PhD salary, but not as good as a postdoc salary.
So just to expand a little bit, the laboratory, we have summer internships for students. We have postdoc positions available. Many of our staff positions require a clearance, which requires a U.S. citizenship, but a lot of our internships and our postdoc postings and some of our staff jobs do not. So there is some flexibility there.
Some very useful advice you've all given there. Thanks. So we've got a couple of really great questions in the chat. The first one is there an average day in your job? And if so, what does that look like?
Pre-COVID, that looked like sitting in my office on my computer. During COVID, it looks like sitting at home on my computer.
I actually thought about that this morning. Yeah, so during COVID, most of our team members are working from home. We also work with, as I said, many people around the world as well. So many of my days will start with a team meeting with people in the US and sometimes in Africa. And then we do a morning stand-up through Zoom every morning. So everyone in the team that's available, we'll just have a very quick chat about what we'll be doing today. And yeah, and the rest of the days will be maybe half on technical work, playing with data, other admin tasks, managing emails and projects, and we do lots of team communication through Slack now, and so lots of checking and messaging on Slack. That's my day.
Yeah, we also spend some time on admin and sort of management related tasks. We spend quite a bit of time on meetings, so just catching up with team members, seeing what they're doing, talking about what to do next, and yeah, sometimes just doing analysis. I mean, kind of similar to what we do in science, but yeah, basically sort of an even split between those three things.
Thanks for that, really interesting. Teresa has asked in the chat, are there opportunities for part-time jobs in your industry? And, does that include not just for those who have, for example, carers duties or medical reasons?
Yeah, at our organization, yeah, there's an incredibly good culture around part-time positions. So I think every position has to be advertised as available on a part-time basis. And we have general managers who are in charge of a team of sort of 30 or 40 people, and they timeshare with each other. So, they're both in 3 days a week because they both have kids. And so, yeah, I think our organization is extremely good at accommodating those kind of flexible arrangements and offering positions part-time.
Same here. All the roles are advertised as part-time if you want to. So yeah, it all can be arranged, and you don't necessarily have to have care duty to take up that.
Most of our positions are advertised as full-time. I don't know what the criteria is to go to part-time. I know some people do. Typically it's people with new families, but I don't know if there's actually any restrictions on what the reasoning is.
So it sounds like there's a range of flexibility when it comes to industry jobs in that respect. So do any of you have any specific advice when it comes to crafting an industry CV in a job application?
I would just say to ask people who've done it before. So the biggest mistake I think people moving from academia into non-academic jobs make when they write applications is putting too much detail in and making it too long. I did that. But yeah, without seeing the position that you're applying for, it's kind of hard to give advice about what to do. To talk to people who've done it, or even better, talk to people who judge those kind of applications.
Yeah, that's actually my first advice as well. Don't make it too long. For me, I think 1 page, if you really need to go to the second page, but definitely not more than 2 pages. And it really depends on what kind of job you're applying for. So do read the job description and look at the skills that's required. So specifically address those. And if you don't have necessarily directly related experience, just something that shows that you can learn and pick up things. I don't know, I guess everyone is different, but and all you need is that to land you an interview. So pick out your highlights and make it impressive, and sometimes do contact people and see if you can get that interview opportunity. So yeah, and then once you get the interview, it's all different.
Yeah, just to echo that, your resume should not be a core dump, shouldn't be your CV. It should be at most 2 pages. Some of the things that I look for, I will look at education. I will look to see if somebody has put their GPA. I look for the type of research you've done. I look for the number of publications you have. I'm less interested in what languages you can code in, but I do want to know if you specialize in simulations, if you specialize in experiments. I don't want to see all the papers in prep. I just want to see what you've submitted. I'm not interested in a list of all of the presentations you gave, but I do want to know that you have good communication skills. So it's kind of just summarizing what you might have in your CV, but in a more concise way.
Some great advice there. So as a follow-up question, do you have any tips on doing well in interviews?
I think rehearsing is important. I'm terrible at interviews, so I don't know what tips I can give. But yeah, I think working out, common interview questions and making sure that you have a set of answers, or at least a set of examples that you can kind of draw on in answering questions. I think that helps a lot.
So we require a presentation for our interviews. There are two big tips I give. First, know the organization that you are interviewing at. Do your research. Know the people, if possible, that are on your interview committee. Chances are they are not going to be a subject matter expert in your field. Make sure that your presentation or your interview answers are at the appropriate level. It's a lot of us want to get up there and look smart, but you also want to look like you can communicate well and you can get ideas across, because you will be working in a team. You will be working with other people. If I can't follow what you're doing, I'm either going to think that you're not a good communicator, or I'm going to feel bad, like I'm dumb. So you don't want to have either of those effects. The other thing is, don't come across arrogant. Be humble, right? People are focusing on, will I want to work with you? Not just can you do the job, but will I want to work with you? So it's very different, right? You want to show yourself as being collaborative, as being thoughtful, but you also don't want to come across as being too much.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we look in interviews is actually that communication skill. So definitely, as Kirsten said, like, it's very important that you are able to explain very clearly. and also, do your homework. Know the organization, because we often have candidates come in and just assume that we do this and that, but that's actually not what we do at all, and that's not good. And also that, you need to be able to, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. As I said, be honest. If you don't know something, don't pretend that you know. Just be honest that you have not done this before, but see if you can come up with some other examples that show that you can learn quickly, and also be specific. Real examples are really helpful, rather than just empty statement. And at the end of the day, if people are hiring, they really want good people. So they are actually, I guess they really want to find the good people. So it's not just that you're being interviewed, but you need to be confident that if you think you can do the job, you need to present that, and they will, they want someone that's good as well. So I guess just relax. If you think that you can do the job, just be confident.
Yeah, I would be slightly freaked out if I'd heard these recommendations. I would be even more nervous than I was when I first, but that's really good points. And it was a really great point that Kirsten made, that people want to find out in the interview if you're going to be just a pleasant person to work with. So I find it difficult, for example, in an interview to kind of be myself, because it feels a very artificial situation. But you really need to share a little bit of, how you are as a person and what you're going to be like to work with. You need to share that with them in the interview. So you need to find a way to do that if it's talking about, your interests, or there are different ways to do that, but that's something you need to think about.
Thanks for that excellent advice. So we're 5-2 now, so I think we'll start to wrap up the session. So are there any parting pearls of wisdom that you could leave us with that haven't already been addressed in today's session?
I will say that I guess just don't think of academia as the be all and end all, or the pinnacle of your career. It's just one thing you can do, and there are other things that you can do which are just as valuable and interesting and fulfilling. Yeah.
My advice is spend some time thinking about your brand, spend some time thinking about your superpower. You are all conditioned to be problem solvers. And we all have different strengths. I am very good at inspiring my coworkers, getting visibility. It's really good to know what your strength is, so that when you enter into a room, you can market that. You can say, listen, this is what I contribute to a team. This is how I can help make, your organization better. This is what I bring to the table. So spend some time thinking about your brand and your superpower. That would be my biggest piece of advice, because even if you pursue something in academia or industry, you're going to want to know that, and that's going to carry you a long way and give you confidence in what you're doing.
I guess I just want to add that there's really not a wrong path that you can choose. So whichever way you choose to go, I guess try to make the most of what you have and enjoy that experience, and good luck.
Thank you, Neil, Kirsten, and Fang, for all of the amazing stories and advice you've given us today. I think everyone here has found your experiences really useful, especially in this time of great career uncertainty and terrible job markets and all that. So on behalf of the ASA ECR steering committee, I'd like to thank you all very much for participating. And I'd also like to thank the other members of the steering committee for putting together such an amazing series of talks.